Oh, yeah, that John too. I was just thinking of him on the way here.
See his truck at the school.
I think he acknowledged the invitation.
Yeah. Well, everybody's so bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and on time. We should reward, right? The world is run by people who show up. So good to see everybody. Thanks for coming. And we're really excited to be here and to talk about the work everybody's been doing. And our team from Buhl MN is here, and we've got some new faces from our shop. So I thought a good way to start would be to just start with a round of introductions. And we'll start with you, Lisa. And what I invite everybody to say is your name, your home community, and then the role you played in the work. Okay?
My name is Lisa Kavas, and I live in Great Scott Township, but the role I played in the community for this project is I helped to write the grant, and then I think I signed up for staying on.
Assume the role.
Right, I had to put it together. Yep. Thanks for
that.
Judy Wahlberg, and I am a supervisor from Great Scott Township, and I'm representing them and trying to get the stuff going over there.
I'm Bill Coleman here on behalf of Buhl MN Foundation.
Whitney Ridlon, here for the Department of Environmental Resources and Rehabilitation.
Steve Georgie, Mount Iron, also the executive director of the Rams, Range Association, Municipalities and Schools. Broadband is a huge issue for our organization and for the region. So I was certainly interested in being part of this effort, and we promoted it through Rams, and we've been actively part of the coalition down at the Capitol, lobbying, doing what we can. I want to see a fiber to the home community up here someplace. I wish we could
Fond du Lac.
bold
We gotta all move to Fond du Lac.
Need some bold leadership in
Yeah.
town.
Yeah.
So that's my efforts.
Great.
I'm Nils Prenko. I'm part of the MIB School Forest Committee.
I'm Daniel Rudolph, and I'm from Gilbert, Minnesota, and I'm a member of the School Forest Committee.
And I'm Henry Prenko. I'm from Great Scott, and I was part of the School Forest Committee, but now I graduated, so not anymore.
Louis Parento, Great Scott Township. Lisa helped me with us writing the grant for our portion of what we were hoping to provide our students. And so I'm school forest coordinator and also help facilitate this part of the grant that we were working towards in developing technology in our school forest.
I'm Mary Magnuson with the Buhl MN Foundation.
Allie McInerney, Communications at the Buhl MN Foundation. We're here to capture your stories, so you might get a tap on the shoulder at the end of the meeting for some more info sharing. That's okay.
Luann Robinson, Buhl MN Foundation.
And Bernadine Jocelyn with Buhl MN Foundation.
Ann Tracy, and I work with the Buhl MN Foundation on the Buhl MN on Broadband blog, so I take all the notes from the blog. So you will be stars tomorrow on the blog.
That's right. How many of you get the blog or read it or see it? So I can clue you guys in. Ann is the web mistress. Does sort of all things broadband in Minnesota. She posts like 45 times a month. I mean, it's a very, very active blog. So any interested in what's going on, both in the state and sometimes even nationally or internationally, that impact broadband, it's a great source for that. And she has been supporting all of the work, and you guys are the 6th of 6 of the cohort. You know that we're one of 6 communities on the Iron Range that we've been working with, and all of the other Strut Your Stuff tour meetings that we've had were documented by Ann. So when you get done today, if your curiosity is piqued at all about what's been going on in your sister communities, why you can go on the Buhl MN on Broadband blog and put the search, just search for the community and read all about it. And she is video recording today, and so they'll be in, so you can get a good flavor of of the work elsewhere. Each community is so unique. You guys know that, I'm sure, from your own experience. It's been really interesting to see how different communities have taken advantage of and what their dreams and hopes have been and what they've focused on. And it's been really different and unique every place depending on what the needs and the passions and the capacities of the people are. So we're really anxious to hear today about how it's been for you. And we're just say one more word of context, that when we started this work, we've been doing this in a lot of communities across Minnesota for a long time. We used to rely a lot on written reports. You know, if you guys, those of you who have received grants before, you always have to write a report, you know. And we sort of thought that it would be more helpful to us to get a kind of, I like to say, fingertip feel about how it's been and what your experience has been and what's worked and what hasn't, to just come and meet like this in person. And is this our third? I guess it's our second. We did this last year as a community, and this is sort of our wrap meeting with you. It's been 2 years from the first time when Bill and Lisa, Betsy pulled everybody together and sort of gobbersmacked, what is this going to be and what can we do? And so here we are, 2 years later, life moves on. And what we want to do today is just in a very informal, relaxed, supportive way, just kind of talk and hear from you about what your experience has been like, what you've accomplished, what you hope to, what worked, what didn't. And we're just going to have just this time together just informally to kind of learn from one another about what's worked and what hasn't. And I just want to acknowledge that this has all been possible because of Iron Range Resources. Whitney's been a wonderful partner. I've really learned a lot from Whitney, and she's been with us in all of the meetings and was here before, and so I just really appreciate that partnership. And the other thing we want to do today, besides just talking, kind of looking retrospectively about what was and what happened, is talk a little bit about opportunities for what's next and what we might do together going forward. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you guys, however you want to handle it. We'd like to hear about, you know, the sort of the full, everything that you attempted to do. And Bill, did you have anything else you wanted to add before we start?
No, not really, just that this was kind of a unique group in that it was kind of citizen-led. You know, it was an ad hoc group that a lot of times we have a city coordinator who's the lead or somebody who's really paid to do that. But this was really a shared group that took on a lot of the opportunity, primarily citizens working on their own time and so on, making time out of their other jobs to do this. And so I think that sometimes it's easier when there's somebody at the head of the table and pounding and bringing their resources to their organization. And so I think it took a while for this group to kind of get its legs under it and establish who really wants to do things, and then they can move forward. And so I appreciate that. And I think Lisa, as she said, she kind of became the coordinator, kind of came down from heaven on her. What could she do, right? You know, why me? Right? Pretty biblical, that kind of thing. That, but she stepped up and did the work, and had her team, of course, that really helped her do that. So
Absolutely. Can I say to that,
Absolutely.
that, yeah, it definitely was a group here that helped with that, and, we're very grateful to the Blandon Foundation and the IIIE for all the opportunities this has given us, so I think you'll hear some really good stories of what's become of that, so. Yeah, I say that in jest, but I'm grateful too, that it's all happened.
And that's great, and that, a lot of times people, you know, leadership opportunities happen, you know, they come at you whether you volunteer or not, and, but they're always pretty important, so. Well, let's hear about maybe your website project to start.
I'll let Judy talk about that, because Great Scott has had a couple of grants through this that has given them some opportunity.
Yeah, we set up a website. In Great Scott Township, we're pretty much isolated unless, as far as internet, unless you've got a satellite. And then even with the satellite, it's slow and it's unreliable if you've got any kind of weather. So we've set up a website there to try to keep people connected. Previously, we just had a newsletter that we would send out quarterly. But our website came up very nice with Lisa's help. That was one of the biggest things. The other project we were
Okay,
working.
can you talk more about what are you posting on there? How are people
We're
listening?
posting any events that may be going on in the community. We're posting our minutes. We've got a calendar that has our upcoming meetings. And if anyone notifies us with any events, we're posting those, so.
Judy, you said you're a supervisor, so the "we," is this the township staff? I mean, you know, you don't have staff, but I mean, the township, who's "we"?
The clerk
The clerk.
is the main one who's keeping the website up, yeah.
Yeah.
Sandy Hoda. She's the main one who's keeping it up. Yeah, she is the main one, so. We've only got one employee, but he's usually out working on roads and whatnot, so.
Sure.
He doesn't have a lot of time to update the
Yeah.
website.
And have you seen that people are using the website then? Do you get good feedback from the
Yeah,
community?
so far, it's coming along slow,
Mhm.
but yeah, so far it's been pretty good. Pretty good, there's been comments on it.
Did you contract with somebody to design it for you, or how did that work?
Yeah, we've gone through, go ahead.
Yeah, Peter Sinabi, he was part of our initial, when we had our huge community meeting kickoff, he had approached and said he could help with some of this stuff, so that's where we met him. And,
Yeah, and he came up with the design for us, he met with Sandy and I, and came up with the design. What we want, he was very good, what we wanted, what we didn't want, he came with some examples. So, yeah, he set it up very nice, very user-friendly.
Mm-hmm.
and then your second grant project.
The second project then was, because the internet is so limited in the township, we wanted to make the town hall, which sits right inside the town of Kinney, we wanted to make it more accessible for people, the internet more accessible. So we set up Wi-Fi through MediaCom, and we've got a Wi-Fi router we set up, and we got the 3 computers, the 3 refurbished computers we've got set up for people/students to come in and use during the school year. And we're also in the process yet of getting a projector and movie screens so we can show movies to the community. Initially, we'll probably aim at kids to come in. So we should have all of that up and running by end of August and the beginning of September. And then we plan on having a student come in for a couple hours, maybe 2 times a week after school, and just have the building open for people to come and access the computers and the internet.
And before, there was no internet access at the town hall,
Correct.
Is that
I
right?
mean, you go into the town of Kenny and you have no cell access.
Wow.
This is true, this is true.
It's that big no service shows up on your cell
Yeah.
phone, so, yeah, there was nothing there.
Is there a library in Kinney?
Yes.
And the fire hall.
The library's been closed for the summer,
Yeah.
so
What?
there's no place for people to go
Mhm.
right now.
And is the fire hall connected?
Was that part of the Northeast Service Coalition or not?
Part of the recent one.
Because, I mean, that would have been the one opportunity to get some.
There's nobody there.
fiber
No
in
man
there.
that, you
Yeah.
know, Strictly volunteer, so I would doubt it's connected.
But they did connect some
We
volunteer
did.
departments.
Oh, yes, yeah,
It was 30 or whatever, but I don't think it was.
right.
Okay. My husband's part of the fire department, and he doesn't mention that it's, great shakes there, so, yeah.
Well, it's great that the town board decided to open up their building for this kind of use. That's exciting.
Well, otherwise it gets used very rarely,
Mhm.
so we thought this would be a good opportunity. And thanks to Blandon, because gave us a huge opportunity to do that.
So the idea is that you'll have a volunteer person or a student that can be there so that the hall can be open for the
That the hall
public.
can be open and to assist anyone one if they need help on computers,
Mhm.
so.
Did you guys get a printer there at the town hall, or just the three computers then?
Just the 3 computers, yeah.
Mhm.
We do, yeah. We're talking about adding a printer to it too.
Mhm. Yeah, nice.
It'll be good, it'll be good.
Thank you. Let's hear about the forest project.
Okay, well, first off, again, I'd like to thank Blandon Foundation for giving us a chance. Lisa for coming up with, I guess, thinking of me and or our school forest. And so, just to start off with, I've been the school forest coordinator, started off in 1991 and took a little hiatus for a while, and then there was some renewed, interest in our school forest. So, for the last...
Can you tell me, I don't even really understand what a school forest is.
Okay, I'm Moulton Iron Buhl School Forest, and Merritt Elementary is obviously located right across here. And we have a roughly 50-acre school forest that has been, I think it was part of a exchange of land within the city of Moulton Iron for when I think we ended up getting Merritt Elementary. I may be wrong in that, but anyhow, this school forest has been donated for educational purposes, for learning about the environment.
Okay.
And so it's there for the public to use.
Pardon me, Louis, but I think just to step back a minute, and other guys can correct me, this is my version of reality that I think I know, is that in the state of Minnesota, at the time when the townships and stuff were all set up, I mean, way back in the 19th century, that there was a decision made that so many acres per school would be set aside as an income generator for that school. So every school district has a school forest that's been designated. So it's not unique to your school.
No,
We have in
No,
Grand
there are
Rapids
several,
and
200
elsewhere.
if not school forests throughout the state of Minnesota.
Yeah.
And some use theirs for, literally, like you say, they do some
Harvesting
before
for
harvesting.
income.
Yeah, and we will be as well. That's part of our long-term goal. We do have a whole organized, school forest management plan with the
Right.
DNR,
Right.
and so it's an established state school forest.
Okay.
If that helps.
It does, very
Okay,
much. Thank you.
terrific, yeah. So we've been using it sparingly for educational purposes, getting out and learning about and, what's out there, and, so to make it more accessible, if we're trying to get an idea of what's out there, we're thought about how do we get access that we can bring back to the school. We try and put 2 and 2 together. We thought, well, first of all, maybe some trail cameras that we could put out and see the wildlife that is out there, and start developing some kind of a way to share with our students. One of the thing might be like a phenology report. It would be something we were trying to maybe look forward to doing with John Latimer from Grand Rapids. And that was kind of the thought, I think, in some of it. Another way is how can we also use some other forms of technology, and we thought walkie-talkies or GPS units, something like that. And so we came up with, probably the best would be to have GPS units where we could take that technology, bring it back to our systems and maybe computers, and start sharing what trails we went on, what we saw, start marking, plotting waypoints for certain activities. So what we've done to this point was to, with the grant, we asked for basically 3 things. One were to get trail cameras, GPS units, and training for those. And so the Laurentian Environmental Center, we contacted them and asked if they'd be interested in training our school forest people in learning how to use these trail cameras, the best, most effective way, how to use GPS units. And ultimately, they're going to be the teachers, these student forest people, to our elementary crew, and teach them how to go out and use a trail camera, and how to make a waypoint, and how to go geocaching would be another. Some of the activities that we have planned with this technology that we're going to do, and maybe the guys can talk about what we did. So,
Okay, so I'll talk about what we did. So, right away when we got there, Jim DeVries,
their meeting, the Laurentian, first part is.
Yeah, when we got to the Laurentian Environmental Center, we met with Jim DeVries, and he talked to us about what we wanted to do and we decided that first we'd set up the trail cameras so that the next day we could go out and see what walked in front of them. And so we did that, and we found some spots where we could set them up. Then we came back, had lunch, and then he gave us some background information on the GPSs. And then we learned how to use the units, and we went out and he taught us how to use them. And then we went out into the woods and marked waypoints at where our cameras were, because we set up 2 of the cameras. Or did we set up 2? 4. We set up 4.
No, we set up 3, and then
3?
one was just for out in, like right next to the LEC, like home house, if you could call it that. And that would be just where we all knew where it was, and then we put one with one half of the group, like maybe half a mile away, and then the other one in the other direction. And then we marked with the GPSs where they were, and then later we could, the next day, we could trade off the GPS, and we could follow each other.
Find
So
the
we could
trail
find each
cameras.
other's trail cams.
See if they know how to use it. So a little proof.
Can you find?
And here they are, so.
You got that?
Changed a little bit, but.
And I take it the cameras made it back too?
Yes.
We had storage for the cameras. Mostly, we were just optimizing and figuring out, like, how to use all the stuff. Like, oh, it has a main menu, like, sort of thing on the GPS. Like, oh, what's the best thing? Or, like, is it a compass? Is it, like, the waypoint marker? What's going to be most useful? Let's set up all the GPSs so they're all, like, the same thing. So when they come in, like, 5th and 6th grade hands, when we're teaching, they're like, oh, you know. So it's not all, like, screwed around. If we could interchange it. And then they would have like the same waypoints on it, stuff like that.
So what's a waypoint?
All it's just like a little checkpoint, like we would go somewhere, set like a little destination, you can walk away from it, and then it'll have a trail, and then it'll have like its exact coordinates and like a little mini map of where it is.
Yeah,
And you
So
can,
like a
go to
spot
it.
on Earth that our satellites hone in on, and you record that spot and give it a name, or it gives,
Oh, okay.
and then you can say, okay, where was Raspberry, you know, and you can
Sure.
see, and then it'll start directing you. Well, the GPS then will show you how to get there.
Oh.
And
So,
we can use,
Kinda like the Google. Google Forest.
yeah,
Google Maps.
exactly.
we can use the GPS units to, because that was like Henry's whole idea. I don't know if it was your idea or Henry's, that the phenology report, we set up the cameras, maybe a volunteer or a student or two would go out like every morning or before school or every like week, and they would go out to the cameras, you know, have the waypoint on the, you know, on the GPS, and then you'd go get the trail cam, you could bring it in, show it off to the high school, you know, make like, I don't know, like a report, right?
A vlog.
There you go.
Right.
Your
Exactly.
pictures,
And then
put
we
it
get-
on Facebook.
And then we
Yep,
could talk to
that's the
John
goal.
Latimer, and maybe he could talk about it, like, oh, you know, have a little segment, you know, go bigger than we, you know, imagined.
And we had one kid, he volunteered to do the phenology report, but only if he got to do it during physics class.
That was probably me at high school.
So we were going to try this out this year with the 5th grade. So we had already created, I think we were going to create some waypoints if we had not already done so. And gonna have the 5th grade basically go a real quick run of, okay, and this was all student led. They were gonna say, okay, they're gonna do it with the group. And so my students went out, and part of also the other part of their education was, at the LEC, was learning how to measure trees. So that was one of the goals they were in 5th grade, besides geocaching, finding a waypoint. The waypoint was gonna be the 5th grade's tree. So every 5th grader went out, found a tree, located it, gave it a name, and did a few things, you know, and then they were going to take the high schoolers to their tree, mark a waypoint, like 2 halves, and then they were gonna do the switch again, and so the kids were gonna try and find their classmate's tree on the other side of the school forest, following their GPS, you know, and so that was part of what we were going to do. And we got most of that done, but on the day that we were going to let the high school come over, it was inclement weather, and I wasn't gonna go with our new equipment, and unprepared kids swamping through, and I was feeling the stress of that, and it was the end of the school year, and I don't know if you know what goes on at the end of the school year with barely a student there in the high school with all the activities that Moulton Iron Buhl kids do.
Well, and you
We weren't
ended
able to
2 weeks
pull that.
early this year too?
Hmm?
So it was a compressed end of the school year. not
Good
just-
point, that
yeah,
too,
Not
right.
just a regular one.
No, we had to, school was cut short as well by 2 weeks for the new construction of
Oh.
our school, so we had to bail out too. So it was really a tough end to.
I bet the high school students just were heartbroken.
They were, the seniors were
That was the deal, you get to camp at the Laurentian and, you're gonna be training. Well, they were looking, I think, forward to it, I don't know,
Yeah.
were you?
Yeah,
I
totally.
hope so.
And we set up like a whole adopt a tree program for the students, and then we also learned how to like, what are the different ways that we could teach the 5th and 6th graders how to measure a tree without like, getting an enormous ruler. So.
You mean the height of
Right,
these?
right.
Yes,
Yeah,
height.
diameter and all that stuff. So Jim had like different ways. He had, I don't know, like he had a little tool that you would look through, and then it had like a level on it, like a bubble level, and then it also had like increments with a mirror, so then you could like look through it, and then it would tell you like, oh, if the bubble's like here, it's this, right?
Calculation.
And then there was like easy formulas that we could also look at, like if I stand, like I'm 6'2", if I stand near the tree, they walk away and they see the whole tree. If you have like a ruler, very far back, how much am I? Like, like maybe I'm like an inch, and then you times that by how many 6'2" is, all the way up the tree, then you know how tall it is. And then we also did like diameter with a, just tape measures sort of thing too. And then we could, I don't know, you had an adopt a tree thing, that was our thing, but then it, like, we didn't have time.
Well, the goal is to carry that over, I wanna start
Sure.
with
Yeah.
younger kids.
Sure.
And have them see the growth of that tree and what happens to it, if it fell down, or what's the progress. Well, keeping that going with the technology end is
Uh-huh.
trying to keep that, like Betsy pointed out, how do we manage that part? So that would be kind of the next, you were talking about what might happen next, that would be our next goal, was to keep some type of, like memory of all the progress we have towards pictures of me and my tree, and move on to 5th, 6th, and all the way up to.
Well, that
a
would be
senior.
fun to have a picture of yourself with a tree.
Yeah,
Like,
Yep.
small tree when you're
Yep.
5th grade, and what happens by
Yep.
the time you're 12.
and like I say, if it falls down then in 12 years, where was it? Well, you're gonna have your GPS waypoint to remember where it was, you
Yeah.
wanna plant a tree there or something, help you
Yeah.
remember. All these different things that evolved from this, opportunity, and so again, I think it's been pretty rewarding, and I hope it will continue.
So in retrospect, are there choices you wish you'd made differently, like in terms of, I don't know, any aspects of the program and equipment or your approach, or?
I suppose if we could have really gone way out, I don't know if there's a radio GPS unit, one that would provide communication, because 40 acres is pretty big, and when you have like 2nd graders out there and you're kind of sweating, especially when you see the bear tracks going through. Okay, how many went that way now? The highway's there, and, so.
RFID.
Strap a little GPS on them, or, a beacon, how do we keep track of everybody? I'm pretty, once they get out there with 5th and 6th grade, I'm, just entwined to be a little bit precautionary, but sometimes I have to just let them go for it, and, I do. But there's, things like giving them the opportunity to have that experience. They can only go so far, before they hit some kind of road and wear back, And I'm not against having on that day too, and they have my number and things like that. So other safety measures, and without, good internet capacities, we'd be in even more trouble, So let's keep that going, right? Good technology coming our way. So maybe something like that would have been a nice, addition to it, some kind of communication means. So, but so far, so good. Anything else, guys? I don't have anything. Well, LEC was really terrific, by the way. Jim DeVries has been teaching GPSing, I don't know how many years he said. He told us maybe 15 to 20 years he's been teaching a class, so it was an excellent choice to have. I mean, it just clarified it so simply for us all to understand how, so if kids were to ask us, questions about it, I think you guys would be able to kind of give a good roundabout understanding of the technology involved in using how they work.
And that was a big part of it too, was figuring out what's the best way for us to teach the kids. So we had to learn how to teach them in the best way. So half of us were pretending to be teachers and the other half were pretending to be students. And we'd be like, okay, what does this button do? What does this do? And then the teacher would have to be able to explain it all, right? And that was a big part of it.
I think that is such a cool aspect of the project. I mean, it's a whole nother skill and relation thing and I think just being a parent that kids more readily maybe learn from peers than from grown-ups, so that's a really.
Well, and from cool high schoolers.
Yeah.
I mean, trust me. Mr. Prento knows who they listen to.
Not me.
Yeah.
I'm a 5th and 6th graders all day, let me tell you. You guys, hey.
Yeah.
You
I
out
was just
there?
wondering if there's a way to leverage that for Earth Day, with your school forest committee and doing a teaching session with people who wanna learn how to use the GPS and the wayfinding. Might be a cool idea.
Yeah, next year.
Yeah. Little.
We did start a tour this year at Earth Fest of the school
Good.
forest with John Latimer.
Yeah.
And then he did like this
He kinda took
technology,
over.
he took
Yeah.
over, it's alright. But then it was also like.
You might as well.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
take her away.
Yeah, he can have a part, but then there's
Yeah.
things that you guys can teach as well.
We know
like
where
you said.
stuff is, he can.
Yeah.
Like
You
a
can narrate.
geocaching day or something like that.
Right,
It would
yeah.
be really fun. That's a great
It would,
idea,
right,
for
yeah.
sure. Appreciate that.
I've had the privilege to be out in the woods with John Latimer one time, and he's got some background in paleobiology, and so he was doing core samples in this swamp and pulling up and talking about hundreds of thousands of years old. So what this forest looked like,
He's mind-blowing.
just
Isn't
it's
he?
incredible.
He is incredible.
Reading the pollen, telling from the pollen in the mud what kind of plants were here, millions of years ago. It's just amazing. It's really helps you can just see, helps you see it with your eyes what used to be here. It's fun. And this whole Ely greenstone up here that we've got, it's some of the oldest rock on the planet Earth. 5 billion years, I mean, it's from the time when the Earth was first formed. It's amazing. It's really neat. Were there any girls involved? It's fun to see guys here.
Yep, there were 2 girls, we had 5 in the group last year. 2 were able to make it to the LEC trip.
Yeah.
How
Well,
many?
Mr. Prento's counterpart
Yeah,
is Mrs. Bush, right?
Yep.
Yes, yep.
So she's a great recruiter of.
Yeah, her and I are both. I'm in the elementary and she's in the high school.
Oh, good,
School
good.
Forest Committee.
When you guys introduced yourself, you said, I'm with this, I thought I wrote down school forest, but you were saying school forest, right? So I was gonna ask you, what's school forest? You meant the
Oh,
school.
schools for us, oh yeah. School forest.
Yeah, school forest, okay. Yeah. Super.
And it'll be nice too, because this fall, our senior high school, or our high school students and elementary kids will all be on the same place. So coordinating and doing some things
That was
together.
a major thing too.
Yeah.
It was.
I mean, the timing is just perfect for this project to bring that together. And there have been lots of philanthropic ways of helping to develop some of the trails through it, right? Is that like?
Oh, yeah, lots of good things starting to happen. Gary Servenic has been working, I know, yep.
Yes.
Yep.
They've cleared and they're putting a 5K, I think it is, track through there
The goal
for
is-
cross-country.
It's the goal, yeah.
Yeah, because do you still run cross-country now?
Yep.
Yeah, so the cross-country team will have a 5K path through there, and I think his intention is to run a junior high meet.
I don't know, I think that's in the
Yeah.
future.
And then, I remember he's talked about it, that like they might be like a sort of figure eight thing, it might be like multiple paths can make like longer distance, shorter
Yep.
distance sort of thing. Like, so we could have multiple.
Yeah,
Another thing we use the GPS units for is marking our trail system out there.
So do you guys talk to other school forest committees? Like I'm just, and being from Grand Rapids, we have a school forest there, of course, with trails and stuff. And
Yep.
was there any of that cross communication?
Well, I work with with our school forest committee, we have annual meetings.
Okay,
So we do get to have a meeting every year with other school forest members. And so
Nice.
it's gotten pretty big, so there's northern and southern divisions of the state school forest system at the DNR. So we have a north meeting now and a in the south meeting. So more related to kind of the species and fauna that you have in your local area. So they're trying to make it more interest related or useful based upon location. So.
And do you have a sense yet how unique this program is? Are you guys first? Are you unique? Are you catching up? Or do you have a sense
I
compared
feel
to
like we're
others?
very like dominant in our area of school forest because like maybe Virginia has a school forest, but I don't know like how extensive it is. But we definitely have like tried to take hold of it. Like we're doing the GPS units, we're doing the trail cams, and we like bring the students out. You know, I don't know. Like I think it's very, like I've talked about it in student council, but like that's like the only outreach that I've had about the other school forest, and it seems kind of like we're the ones that are like kind of doing the best with it, right?
And Daniel's talking about the Northeast Region Student
Yeah.
Council, not just our student council, there's a group of them that gets together.
Yep.
I don't know how many schools are involved, but quite a few, there's hundreds of
42.
kids that go, yeah,
42 schools?
42 different schools.
Wow.
at their region.
I would say as far as our trail system and things go, we're back in the development stage. When the school forest first started in the 80s, it was very well established as far as the trail system. It was basically completely guided with useful for like trails, walking paths, and it was really well done. But after time, nature takes over, and so the funding and the interest back in the middle 90s, it got pretty run down, and so it's back in more so in the rejuvenated period, I would say, as far as going through. If you were to walk through that school forest, it looks pretty messed up right now, actually, because part of it is developing our cross-country trail system. We started to take our old trails and basically knocking them down to make them wider and really more user-friendly. So the goal is to really establish and have a lot of different activities out there other than just hiking. So the goal is to make it for cross-country, so it's going to be used for that. We have a fire pit and a little learning center out there, so that any student could go out there and build a fire and have a class, have a lesson out there. So there is that already developed. And now with these new trail systems, it's pretty exciting. Couple bridges, and so it'll be a lot of. It's very diverse too. Our school forest. It's just from pine forest to poplar forest.
How many
to
acres did you say it is?
Well, the whole property is 52 acres, so
Okay.
I'm gonna guess in the 40+ acres is strictly forest, so. Football field didn't take too much, I was pretty much duking it out with them a little bit, but I like football too, so, one of those tricky cross-member challenges, how far are you going into that swamp? So,
Well, the story that you tell about the school forest since the 80s, to me, is a great illustration of the role of leadership. It's languished because nobody cared about it or paid attention to it, and here come you guys,
Find
and
funding for it.
you
Movies
know.
always cared about it, but
Yeah.
there wasn't always just ready funds for it.
Yeah.
right.
And that's changed. Okay.
So where is the funding through the legacy funds, or where have you found the resources?
I don't know that we've gone after that yet.
No,
Right,
DNR primarily.
And then some private businesses who have, volunteered equipment and time and things.
exactly.
But Louis and I would like to tap maple trees in there to aid his sapping, session that they have to have in 5th grade, is it?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Believe it or not, Minnesota has a science standard around maple syrup.
Yes, we do.
In case you didn't know.
I wonder what they do in Southwest Minnesota.
Huh?
I wonder what they do.
We don't care.
Right.
They make corn whiskey
Corn
down
syrup.
there.
Yeah, I like that class. Good trade-off.
Yeah.
What's next?
Well, I wish John or Mary were here, because I think they
John
could
is-
talk more about what is going on
At
with
the
the new
clinic, so-
school. Okay,
That's why he's not here.
okay. Yeah, with some of the development of the new school, because I know that part of the funding was to help provide some of the equipment that's in some of our spaces over there. There's a maker space. Have you been over there and toured?
No, I haven't toured them. I'm like, right at, I've been watching the development but
Yeah.
we actually, the elementary hasn't been invited yet to visit. It's mostly the high school teachers and administration they've been more the, wanting to see the progress so they can probably think about the material they need to purchase or furniture or whatever is needed for their classroom, but
We'll have to talk about that, because
but my teaching partner is the Iron Range Makerspace. She is the new instructor, so I've had a lot of communication with her regarding space and looking at how it was going to be arranged for what use, what part. So I think half of her space is developed towards technology, as far as access around having group meetings regarding what type of focus group, if they're gonna have groups working on projects, and I'm not sure how familiar you are with Iron Range Makerspace, so that could be a whole nother topic, but that was a big part, I think, of the technology end regarding, I don't know if that was part of Landon's.
Yeah, I know that that part of the grant fund request was for some equipment that was going in there.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure
So true.
that was part of it.
There was something about a journalism classroom.
Yes, Kathy O'Malley in the high school has a journalism classroom that I think their equipment was pretty archaic
Yeah.
and not,
Well,
were you part of her
yes,
class? Okay,
yes.
so maybe you can kind of talk about what we had.
Well, we had, probably IMAX, a bunch of them in the computer lab, and those, it worked, so that was whatever, and then we've got the one camera, which is actually a really nice camera, that we have, but only the one, and then, what else? We've gotten a green screen, recently, and there's a part of the class that does that. I was more on the yearbook side, of the journalism class. I'm not sure what's coming into the new journalism classroom. I didn't hear anything about that. And the old one, what else did we have?
You have one like high-end, it's kind of like shotgun mic for the camera, like
Yeah,
just a very.
yeah, microphones was okay one.
Yeah.
What else? That's about it. That's about it
That's about
that
it.
we had. An iPad and a tripod.
Uh, But she's like looking into it, like she wants a whole green screen room and like sort of a deal. I haven't heard that much, but she's very like
Yeah.
outgoing with it, I've heard.
I know they're very excited about it. And Mary Spike is our technology director person, and she was just shaking her head when she looked at what she was using in there as far as what's possible and what they had to use.
Yeah.
So I think that was part of it too, so I'm not sure what's been purchased and what's going to be a part of that, but. And then we had the business.
Yeah, so I was involved in 3 different projects. One was the feasibility study, and Steve Georgie and Whitney and I have all been involved in that. We are to the point where we have the sort of one-pagers for each community, because this was the combined cohort. So I don't know if each of the other 5 have given you reports on where the feasibility study is at, but I wanted to let my community know. We are at the page where we have a one-pager kind of on each community, what is possible, what is accessible right now, what the cost could be, what the demographics are, things like that. Because what we're going after is, there's a USDA brand new grant that we've never heard of before that will be for 10-1 communities. So we have our consultant, Diane Cruz, who's been fabulous to work with, looking at which of our communities qualify for the less than 10-1. And so for those particular, 10-1, 10 down, 1 up.
Oh,
So there's varying levels of grants that are available. In the state of Minnesota, it's anything less than 25.3. In this USDA grant, it's anything less than 10. We found out about it because Whitney had made a connection with the guy at the USDA who said, oh, by the way, I have a new thing coming up, it's not even published yet. So we're preparing ourselves to go after this grant in January, is that correct, Whitney?
Yes.
Okay, they think they will release the application period in January with all of the requirements and all of those sorts of things, so we're, we still don't know anything about it, but the guy assures us he's gonna keep us involved. What was his name?
Dominic.
And he was very, good on the phone. So hopefully there's an opportunity to go after some funding there, because the state broadband funding, of course, we all know, was part of the big, huge omnibus bill, is that what they call it? Ominous omnibus bill?
Ominous omnibus, yeah.
That's
good.
The whole thing.
Omnibus Prime, I think.
Yeah, okay, Omnibus Prime was another good one. It was just deleted, it was vetoed, whatever. So I told him, you know, if Governor Dayton would've gone in, deleted everything else but the broadband funding, we'd have been happy. But that wasn't possible. So hopefully there's a stab at that with all of the things that are less than the 25-3 next fall. So we're preparing ourselves for 2 different possibilities of grants and, you know, working towards that. We do have some funding left for Diane's work. It's a little less than 20,000 now, like 16, maybe 17.
We have enough for her possibly to do 2 visits.
Yeah.
Now we're to the
Oh,
point where,
yep.
as Steve Georgie says, we need bold leadership here.
We do.
We have the information, we have.
Costing.
Yes.
And that has been proven out by the providers, because we brought it to MediaCom and CTC, and they looked at her numbers and agreed with them. So she's not, you know, outside the realm of what the cost is.
So we're looking at bringing Diane up for sure in the end of September, and possibly again to present to all the communities, possibly have like an open house where we can invite people in to learn about the study, and just kind of, this is the opportunity to do a fiber to the home project right now, you know, contingent on, you know, 50% USDA funding, and then putting together the local match. But the local match has to be put together.
And we need, this is my vision, okay? So I'm working towards blended communities in Virginia, Evelyn, Gilbert, and in the East Range. So that's Mesabi East area, White Lakes, Aurora by Waback, and Town of White. If we get those 2 more communities, and do we still need Nashwauk, Whitney, which you're working on?
We're looking at West Range.
We will be spanned from where Itasca has fabulous fiber to the home, all the way to Lake Connections has fabulous fiber to the home, all the way to White Lakes. People have it in Embarrass. Bear Creek Acres has fiber to the premise because of the Lake Connections project with Landon's help. We don't have it here. So I'm putting together 2 more communities that will span or bridge our Iron Range network. And then we need all of the citizens in those areas to get together and say, we demand it. It is no longer okay to say that satellite is the app.
I just love listening to you talk.
What I'm preparing you all for. What I'm preparing you all for is a bus ride down to the state capitol on broadband day. I want the state capitol steps filled. I want all of you down there talking about why satellite is not okay for us up here. So I want a bus trip filled. You know, we do it for Polynet. We do it for, you know, Line 3 for Enbridge. We need to do it for broadband, people.
But, we need that city council.
Yep, yep, so you gotta just ask those, you gotta demand that those people join us. They have to be there, or we vote them out and put new ones in. I don't know, that's where I'm at, okay? It's electrification of the rural people, so, you know, we got it, that's what we got the co-ops for. Yeah, okay, so I'll get off my soapbox about that.
What's your other 2 projects?
Oh, my other 2 projects, so. I do them, but they're secondary to my, I told you when we started, Bill, feasibility was my, yeah. So I'm also working on business technology training. We had the first one here at the City Hall. And it was about, you know, what social media platforms and things, mastering social media, basically. So Caitlin Lilly from Art Unlimited came and presented. And funny thing, so Steve, you'll be happy to know they got some new presentation materials here.
Yeah.
And the Wi-Fi was not strong enough in City Hall to cast to the projector. So her
You have to go
pictures.
get the secret password.
I know. I told them that afterwards. I didn't realize they had it. The lady from the city was in there helping us. I didn't realize she didn't give them the secret password to not throttle it down. Whitney and I learned about this. It would load her picture line by line. See, here's my dog coming up here. And you'll see us
That's just
talking
on
about 5
purpose
minutes.
to make the case that we need better internet.
I wanted to record it. I wanted to send it down to what's his name. Anyway.
It's also the
Hey,
case.
good way to bring it down and say, okay, we want to present,
That
but
sometimes.
here's what
I did say that we need to have the, we should do a remote
Stone chisel, start
presentation.
flintstoning your
Right,
message.
we should do a remote presentation with the committee
Yeah.
and do it over satellite so they see the lag.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I'm not even kidding.
That's
So that's not the provider
No, it's not.
in this building.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's the equipment.
It's user
Yeah.
Yeah.
errors.
See, I've
Yeah.
lobbied for 2 years to get the AV upgrade, because they haven't done an upgrade for 17 and a half years in this building. So it took me 2 years to convince the council. At the same time, city administrator, you need to get a couple of repeaters in there for better broadband access in the public room, because they have a public Wi-Fi, and then they have a secured. The secured is fine.
Oh, it rocks, yeah.
So I host an event here, and I had to get the secure password, but John Laughlin was supposed to get them a couple of, routers that they could have better. Well, Craig isn't here,
Yep.
so it speaks
Okay.
volumes, that's all I can tell you. It's not easy.
Yeah, it's
But
an
I don't-
uphill
I don't
battle, but we
quit.
now have cool, we
So
have
I'll just get on the
screens
mayor, and I'll let the mayor know.
and cool projectors in there, so it's one step at a time. And we're going to, communicate that, because we have 5 more sessions set up. And the last one is to help nonprofits turn, their marketing into dollars and things like that. So I know there's a lot of interest around those because, they all struggle for that. So we tried to have quite a few around businesses. One's gonna be about Facebook Live. I think that's the one that Kathy O'Malley was talking about coming to because she thought that might be interesting for the students, things like that. Those will be during the school day and they're at lunchtime, so, she can maybe get them over here from. So, we have all those set up. They'll be done by November. And then the other thing that we're doing in concert is the technology audits and mini grants to businesses to, improve their digital marketing and improve their technology. And so I have 3 that have gone through the technology audits and 2 more in the pipeline and a couple others that I'm talking to. So hopefully that will all be done by November as well. But the folks, one of them is the new childcare coming in, which is Iron Range Tykes, will be right here in Mount Iron. She worked through the technology audit. She's gonna bring, 75 to 100 much needed childcare slots to this area, which is huge. That's another project that we're working on. All of these things kind of overlap and dovetail, so. There's been some really good projects coming through. The 3 technology audits so far have been for a manufacturing company, a childcare company, and I heard, I may or may not remember what it is. Oh, the AEOA, who is kind of a,
Oh, yeah.
because they deliver services to the Mount Iron community, we grabbed them to allow them to access some of the technology training, because they know that that's something they lack in, and it's really hard for them to justify to their grant people and their federal grants that they need to hire somebody who markets their services. But if you don't market your services, nobody knows they exist. So they're hoping to do a better job with that.
That's such a critical regional resource, AOA, so
Yeah.
that's, helping them helps a lot of other.
Yep, so that's why we put them through the audit as well.
And you found some readiness there, or
Oh, yeah, they were
openness
like
there.
chomping at the bit. 4 or
Nice.
5 of them came to our first technology training. We had over 20 people at that first training. Yep, so, and that has been a great collaboration with Laurentian Chamber. They weren't at the table originally because they were in a period of transition. But I believe the chamber will be leading hopefully one of the next applications to the Lyman communities this fall. And her emerging leaders group took on that training and scheduled it all, facilitated everything, set up all the, they have lunch here. I mean, it's a phenomenal collaborative effort. They're really been super helpful because I realized, kind of like Lisa, that I cannot facilitate all of it. As much as I would like to, that one I think was somebody else's project and landed on my plate, and I wanted to make sure we did it well here in our community, but, planning it into my schedule was a little bit tough, so I found some help, big help, and they've been awesome.
Wow, super. Those are your 3, so we heard,
Yep.
okay.
I'm done.
I've got a question for
I'm
you.
done. Be ready for the bus trip.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, and I want to say, I'll say a word about that later, but Judy, for you, about the townships, are the other townships have you been talking to other townships around you that heard about this, or?
No, our closest one is Vulcan, and we're just starting to do trying to do some work with them as far as, they only have 1 employee also, 1 full-time employee. And equipment, we're looking at trying to share equipment because equipment cost is so expensive.
Sure.
For each of us. But, no, we haven't really discussed any broadband stuff.
They're a part of our,
Yeah.
they're a sister cohort, yep,
Yeah.
and that's why we, for the feasibility study, Larry Killian has been involved. And so he brings a lot of that information back to the Dalton Town Board, so they're aware of what's going on, so if you make some foyers there. And I can't remember what they've done over that way, Whitney was.
We had some public Wi-Fi at the town hall.
It'll be
Did
great
some-
to get, check the, if we do have an open house, to get some of our, cause I've had twice now, I think I've had residents from our township contact me, or have, maybe someone's here for them to contact me. About where.
Yeah, hey, where's it going,
Yeah,
yeah.
I know, we just throw a tower up in our backyard.
Yeah.
Like, funding together, I mean,
Well, Dark Lake did
people are
that.
desperate.
The Dark Lake
Did
Basin
Dark Lake
put a tower up in their backyard.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They have a community
Community
group that,
service.
that paid for it, yeah.
yeah, and they pay a fee, don't they?
Yeah,
One
they do.
person manage it, yep.
Yeah, the Dark Lake Basin, they have zero service otherwise, so they put one up.
So the work here has definitely stirred some of the residents up, like, we gotta do something. I think they're anxious to get on board with something, but I've also been trying to say, we're trying to go at this as a group too, so that it's a stronger representation coming at
Yeah.
federal funding,
Sure.
wherever we can get
Yeah.
it from,
Sure.
versus, you know, a few neighbors trying to get it down.
Yeah, as Bernadine
It
says,
has a,
community by community slogging it out, please, you
it
know.
has a
Yeah.
frog's hair difference in there
Yeah.
of where we start.
So have we missed anything? Any other stories we want to tell before we move on to the next part of the agenda? Anybody?
Well, I just want to comment or relay that, not necessarily because of this community grant, but because of RAM's efforts to promote rural broadband. We undertook a kind of a initiative through our organization to do the Big Ones resolution. So the board, which was 24 elected officials from across the academic assistance area, passed the resolution first, and then we share it with all our community member groups and ask them to consider following up. And I think I got a dozen communities, and the Mountain View School District also adopted one, although they don't do a lot of excavation. But the basic philosophy
After the
being
football field, anyway.
is that if you're doing an excavation in your community, you should make sure to put a conduit in there, a marked conduit. So in the future, if there's an opportunity for fiber to the home or even, better high-speed broadband, it's there. Once we got a collection of those, I committed to going to St. Louis County because I'm convinced nobody's gonna succeed around here without county support. Which is unfortunately, because of our geographics, a challenge compared to where southern Minnesota, we've seen a lot of counties jump up and
Yep.
carry some of the freight so they can
Makes a
actually
big
do
difference when you got
broadband
county
expansion.
leadership, yeah.
But, so I did make a presentation, in July to the county board. And it was a good give and take, back and forth. Commissioner Rukavina was very supportive. There actually was very little resistance, even the Duluth commissioners. Geez, they're tearing up the main street of Duluth, I wonder what they're doing down there. Good question. Hopefully they're putting cable also.
Yeah.
Fiber.
Yeah.
But, it just brings it home, and,
Well, who could be against it? It feels like apple pie. I mean, what could you possibly object
well,
to?
it's a challenging concept, because I think what they're thinking is we're gonna run 500 miles of conduit through, all along the ditches of our county road, which isn't necessarily the case. The key is the, the intersections, basically.
The crossings.
The crossings, So if they're doing a ditch across that county road, public road, or into somebody's driveway, then we wanna put the conduit. So it's, a 40-foot piece of conduit, so it's $40, and to put it in there is next to nothing. That's the key, so that if a provider comes along, we're not tearing up those public intersections, and right-of-ways is what they call them, right-of-ways and stuff. So, I think you gotta have a further conversation. The Public Works Director was there. They asked him his opinion followed, John Laughlin and I were there, and he followed us out, and he said, I don't support this. If I have a budget to fix roads, I'm gonna spend it on the roads. So, I haven't heard anything, I called Commissioner Rukavina and asked for a follow-up, because Commissioner Nelson is the chair. He wanted to direct this to a work study group. Rukavina wanted to just draft a resolution and have it on the next agenda. So I asked, does anything happen? And he said no, but they were having a meeting up at Orr that next day, and there was some project going on, and he was gonna ask about it and see if he could get the dialogue moving again.
But the public works director supporting it would be hard.
Yeah.
Well, but he works for them. It certainly doesn't make it easier. Now, Commissioner Jugovich is in charge of public works, basically, or roads. So I wanted to follow up with him, and, because he didn't make a comment at the meeting, which was somewhat disappointing, but Commissioner Jewell and Boyle, Stauber, I mean, they were all asking really good questions and spot on, so.
We all think about that as being really important in the rural piece, but it's really most important in the cities. Because that's where it's expensive to dig.
Yeah.
You know, when you're in the
Yeah.
sidewalks, or you're in the
Yep.
street crossings,
Yeah.
you know, out along County 73 or something,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
you're not gonna put the conduit in right where the road is anyway, you're gonna put the conduit in 30 feet to
Right.
the edge.
But it's the right of ways, and it was interesting, because that same week, there was a Laurentian event on broadband, and I mentioned it there. And then there was another event, and I happened to sit next to the city administrator from Gilbert, and he said, next year they're tearing up their main street. He said, oh, boy, we're gonna be putting conduit in.
Yeah.
You know, so they didn't adopt the resolution as of yet, and, but I sent them the information, so. But those are the things, you know, you just have to be thinking, and, you know, they just tore up this whole area out here, and I can guarantee you there's no conduit.
When was
Virtually
that?
dead.
When was your meeting there with the county?
Yeah, I think it was, I don't know.
I'm just
Around
curious,
2
because I
weeks.
spent a day with Commissioner Nelson.
It was out at Fail
We
Township,
need to move him
It was
into
at-
this whole
whatever they were, Fail Township.
idea of broadband.
When we presented to the county board the first time, he had said, I support the idea in general, but I'm not raising taxes to accomplish it. That's what he said that the first time we were at the county.
Yeah.
He thinks
when
in a few
Diane
years,
was
we're gonna
Yeah.
all have
Yes.
satellite.
Yeah.
It'd be a waste of putting anything in the ground.
Yeah.
That's his perspective,
But,
Well, he is
Fine,
up for
fine.
reelection, people, he is up for reelection, I'm just saying.
the
But I
alternative.
Vote for him on a cloudy day when the satellite.
And maybe
Oh,
what
it's
he
snowing.
needs is-
Yes,
Sorry.
sorry.
Today,
Can't vote today.
Yeah.
I
Can't
think
vote
what he
today.
needs is education on it. I mean, maybe that's what he needs.
Well, we tried to hold an education session and no one shows, and I mean,
Yeah, it's almost, we have to take it to them and sit down with them in their office and lots of people. Not just Steve, everybody. Hi, just want to talk to you again about broadband,
Well, and
10 person in a row.
The other thing too
What else do you do?
which was positive is, down at the broadband lobby day, there was a lady from one of the Duluth townships, right out of the.
Jan Keogh.
Jan. So we happened to be in Senator Bach's office at the same time, and so Buhl made a connection there. I told her I was going to St. Oh, okay, so she talked to a neighboring township, Lakewood Township maybe it is or something. So there's 2 townships just north of Duluth that are desperate, and so they are very interested. So now you get a different commissioner tied into it.
Grand Lake Township is struggling,
Yeah. Yeah, so we're making those connections through RAMs, keeping them informed, and that's another part of this. And Cherry Township now became a member of RAMs.
Yep.
They're part of our.
Yeah, they're part of our study.
So we've got a poll. We need Balkan, they haven't joined yet, but we keep trying to get them back in and to be members. But again, it's building, you know, that base.
Yep.
And one voice, one range will make it happen. But
Yeah.
my frustration is, you know, the grant program is great because it gets community but ultimately, we need to come together as one
Yes.
and get a, you know, a huge grant to do it. You're
So-
not gonna do it 10 miles at a time.
Yeah. To that point about better together and all that coming, I just wanted to follow up on Betsy's comments about the broadband day at the Hill and the experience this last year. And so the foundation's been working hard to try to help people that care about rural from all kinds of sectors see the shared interest in broadband infrastructure, how everybody needs it, and to try to come together in a shared advocacy agenda at the state capitol. Because you know, in our experience, you got the Minnesota Rural Education Association, their number 1 and 2 things on their lobby list is education, right? And the League of Minnesota Cities and the Association of Minnesota Counties and the townships, they care about LGA and, you know, there's lots of, although townships broadband is there on their top of their list. But trying to help catalyze the coming together of an aligned public advocacy voice for rural broadband. And so this last year, for the first time, we sort of did that. We've had 2 broadband days on the Hill. The first one, the foundation kind of lifted up, and then the second year, the coalition came together and did some fundraising, and the foundation helped too, and they hired a professional lobbyist who had a lot of experience at the Capitol and got this bipartisan bill. Sandy Lehman was the chief author, and a lot of good, you know, bipartisan support in both houses. Simonson, and the number was not, of course, what I sit on the broadband task force. It wasn't what the task force recommended by any means, and it wasn't what the original number. But at the end of the day, you know, there was the lobbyist pointed out that they were the only expenditure in the, you know, it was a bonding year. So they, you know, they got into the budget. It was did great, and it was just because of the machinations at the end that it didn't get funded. Point being that, okay, it's coming, the calendar's coming around again, and we're gonna be back at it, and it's a budget year. And the foundation is really trying to help the coalition. We wanna see it succeed into the next, this is a kind of a tenuous time, you know, in that transition. Just 2 weeks ago or so in St. Paul, we had a meeting of the coalition members and including the people the organizations that contributed funding, and Judy, the consultant, was there, and kind of said, so now what, right? So now what are we gonna do? And I just wanna point out that it's not a given that there's gonna be a broadband deal. Everybody's gotta sign up, and they have to fundraise. They gotta raise about $35,000 or so of money to pay, right, for the voice at the coordination of the voice at the Capitol. And so I just encourage you, Steve, and those others of you here to just be aware that the coalition isn't gonna happen unless everybody holds hands and steps up and makes it so. And I know the first year we were looking for, you know, there were a lot of organizations, 74 or so, you know, members, with a lot of little bits of money, $500, you know, $1,000. We need people to step up and participate. So Bill's been playing a role in trying to help make that baton pass complete to the next year, and putting together kind of a business plan for, you know, what would it take, what's the budget look like, and so sort of stay tuned. And if I'm looking at you, especially Steve and Whitney and you guys, just be aware that it's only going to be so if we all make it so.
I was online, it was a real challenge to listen.
To hear, it was hard to hear.
Wow, a lot of technical issues.
Yeah, we did it.
I think it was working fine, and then somebody came on and it was
About an hour
like
and a half.
destruction.
Oh, someone didn't have mute?
Mute, or they're listening through their computer, or they're listening, you know,
Yeah, I don't know what
Betsy
it
was listening by satellite or something.
It was snowing.
Never know, it was snowing in July, never know.
But yeah,
Yeah, it was,
I listened to that part and
Yeah.
I don't know what else you could hear, but.
The intriguing thing towards that too is that, you know, everywhere you talk, people are in support of it. It's just getting the dollars to hit their own, to you know, getting them to step forward and say, you know, they put the bills forward, but it's kind of interesting that you know, a lot of non-controversial bills did not pass this time. You know, because there were other things that was taking up the airspace, I think. I don't know. I'm not as in tune with that as
But the
Steve.
chair is a satellite proponent,
Yes.
Mhm.
so that was a
It's huge.
real problem.
Yes.
You know, but,
Garofalo, right?
Yeah.
and the Republican leadership doesn't support it.
Mhm.
You don't hear their candidates talking about broadband. But fortunately,
So, and to that
other
point,
candidates are.
yeah.
Well,
And-
two of them
but-
showed up in our area at our Laurentian Chambers broadband information session. So, you know, we need to keep sort of just talking to them. I know Julie Sandsteed over on that side you know, talks about it, but we need to make them intimately aware of.
and
if you live
Simonson
outside
has
of
been
Hibbing,
super supportive, yeah.
what it feels like, you know, so.
So in terms of other stuff, kind of we said going ahead, we have been really pleased with our partnership with IRRR, and they were pleased enough with us to continue. We've gotten a new round of funding to work in partnership with them to bring on 4 new communities. Betsy mentioned this earlier. That was kind of what she was talking about. We're in the recruitment development phase now, that by this fall we want to identify 4 new communities that we're going to be able to partner with and bring them on into this project. And the foundation is also, with our own funds, is just tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, we're going to be having a launch meeting for 4 other new communities that we're bringing on board from southern Minnesota. But one of them is Koochiching County. And so they're going to be joining the new cohort from up here because of just it's a regional partner. It makes more sense for them to go through the program. But as part of that new opportunity, we are able to offer kind of an alumnus status for our current cohort. And so the idea there is that we could continue to work with you if you want to continue on. We would have another, and Bill would come up, and Ann and us, and we would do another sort of big blue sky visioning meeting and kind of reopen the conversation and invite everybody in and talk about, it'd be a chance for you to tell the whole team about what you did, what you accomplished, and what there's still to do, and what else you might do. And with that would come another $50,000 of grant funding over 2 years. That similarly, like this first round, what do we want to do? What's the opportunity? And then get those funds from the foundation through that application process we had last time to make it so.
It's always complicated on the end range. So no. Yeah.
Only if you don't live here, Bill.
You know, the greatest compliment I ever got in my career was somebody said, well, Bill, why are you leaving us? We treated you almost like one of us. Almost, that's right. That was many years
Who's that
ago.
Mark?
Henry Henka.
Okay.
Anyway, so we expect that one of our new applicants will be the Laurentian Chamber. And so, of course, they generally encompass 4 communities, including Mount Iron. And so the question is, do you want to participate with them? They're going to be a new BBC? Or do you want to stay kind of part of, your own separate Mountain Iron Buhl initiative? So one of the issues that we've suffered from probably is organizational capacity as we have launched this year. And so with the Laurentian Chamber, that kind of issue would go away. There'd be an organization to help organize and get grant reports and grants and those kind of things. And so Whitney and I have been talking about this a little bit about, what's the best way, and it's probably always some kind of combination approach, but recognizing, usually when we do Iron Range community, it's one community or maybe 2 smaller ones. Now we're talking about the heart of the Iron Range with the Quad Cities. It's a bigger area, multiple communities. And so maybe we say, well, it's one community, but it's more resources than the $75,000. And so we just have to figure how that's going to work. And certainly if you guys say, we wanna stay, you know, we're got our momentum going, we want those resources for the Mountain Iron Buell area, you know, I'm amenable to that, certainly. But the question is, how do you guys wanna play in this? Do you wanna be your own thing? Do you wanna be a part of the bigger thing? Then we can kind of figure out the money as we go. I mean, that'd be that's how I would, you know, see two options happening. So that's really up to your team to think about how you best wanna interact and organize.
So instead of being a wellness, it would be
A brand new,
a.
yeah.
And there'd still be the grant funding available for projects, but it would be a little more regional scope.
So the beauty is, if you're independent, then it's ours, right? We can,
What happens like to Great Scott Township?
Yeah.
They're not like Quad Cities.
And you'll,
Would they be under a school envelope of this, you know?
and that we
Would
were
you-
before.
And that's what we currently.
That's why we created the community that way, but
and lines are always nebulous. They don't really believe in lines on that. So,
Could,
you know, and
could,
so that's, we
could
would
we-
make something, if your group wanted to come into the Quad Cities group, I can't believe that the Laurentian Chamber would say, oh, sorry, no way is Great Scott Township participating with us. I just
well,
can't
we have a
see that.
meeting on that on Thursday, so I could propose something with that, but what I would could we do a hybrid where part of it's brand new and part of it brings in our alumnus cohort? You know what I mean?
Yes, I mean, an approach would be to say, so the Lynn Chamber, which is Mountain Iron, and then plus the alumna community would bring in town, Great Scott. And you said Buell too, right? Was
Yeah.
in- Yeah.
Yeah, cause Great Scott Township is, and then there's, yeah, but I'm just wondering what the township is in Mount Iron. Is there a township out there, is it Wolf or something?
Aren't they unorganized, the
Yeah.
ones north of Buell?
Anyways,
that's going toward the.
Just something for the,
And the feasibility study for Great Scott Township has been done, you know,
Yeah.
we have that information, that doesn't go away.
Yeah.
So,
no, it's, yeah, and this is project-based now, the second group of funding is not gonna be around, you know, infrastructure studies, it's project-based, so. But I think some of the school district projects really do, you know, could use an additional group of funding, so I would hate to say, you know, no, we're not gonna even be part of something. Because
well, I don't see why the school district couldn't have someone at the table
Mhm.
at those meetings, and like Bernadine says, those who show up are the,
Well, and it is, yeah.
Pretty organized on that side, yeah,
Yeah.
How competitive will it be though for them to
very
get those
competitive.
extra
it'll be
things
more,
versus us doing
it'll be
Because
more.
our administration is county, just to confuse it even more.
Right,
We have an
Yeah.
independent school district that's gonna be managed by the county school district, so.
Is that a change?
yes.
Yeah, when
Yes.
John
This year.
retires.
New superintendent.
New
of
superintendent.
St. Louis County
Yes.
Schools.
Yeah, which it does not include Virginia.
But
so
my
if you
guess
guys wanna
would
be,
be,
go ahead, Steve.
Yeah.
well, I have a couple of things, you know, the Laurentian Chamber, I'm glad they're looking at this, but my concern is it's the business community,
Mhm.
okay? They're all connected for the most part, because they're, you know, within
Not if
city
you
limits.
talk to Pace,
Well,
it's
again, there's
$10,000 to
pockets,
get, yeah.
but there's pocket, but I understand,
Easy
but
to
my
download.
concern is what is, you know,
Not kidding.
how far are we gonna go with this? And again, as a
They're gonna-
community, I think for any of this to succeed, you have to have local elected officials
Yep.
as part of this. They're not part of the chamber necessarily.
No, the Renton
Some are
Chamber,
because they may be a business person on there, like the ladies on the rock, but
the Laurentian Chamber is going to go after the entire Evelyn, Gilbert, and Virginia school district boundaries as well. So Worry Township, Vale, you know, and
Right.
all four of the cities will be at the conversation tomorrow, talking about how they wanna pitch it. So I think there's going to be a lot of competition for the funding. And that's why I'm saying, I wanna know if we could do sort of a hybrid new combination, because I don't want to, you know, take this alumnus community and, yeah, exactly, have them have. But I don't know if there's and then if there's our alumnus dollars, that could go towards other worthy projects, if they aren't needed over here, you know, we just as soon share them.
Well, two things. We, as Bill alluded to with Whitney, we don't want to penalize right-sizing the project. And so, you know, that if you go together for, you know, so we want to make sure that there's not a disincentive for people to collaborate if it makes sense for other reasons to collaborate. What was the second thing I was going to say? I forgot. Anyway, so that we're figuring this out. And the good news is we get to just do what feels like the right thing. I mean, we can, as long as we can explain it, right? And we can explain what our approach is, then we're fine. It's really about getting the right scale of collaboration, because collaboration's a good thing, and there are some things you can do better together. So we would want to make sure that you guys were not penalized if you went in because you thought for other reasons it just made more sense to do it.
Well, and so going in together, what are the benefits of that? Because are they gonna be repeating some of the things that we already did? I guess I'm kind of trying to figure out what
Do you
are the
think that
benefits
the
of
Mount
going
Iron
towards it?
Buhl community as a whole was engaged as they could have been this first time around? Honestly,
No.
No.
right?
No, I wouldn't say that.
I would
We
say
have a
Great
lot.
Scott Township has been, but so then I saw Vulcan in the Chisholm one, but. So how do,
I mean, Chisholm did some great things within their community too.
Mhm.
The pocket parks and,
Mhm.
you know.
And the Wi-Fi
they-
hotspots you can check out, that go all the way up to Cook.
Yep, I mean, that's,
From the library, they have them at the
Right.
library.
again,
So I think it's how to make, how to,
If you guys wanna go forward and have another vision meeting and project development things, there's no reason we would say, no, you can't be an alumni.
yeah.
And at the same time, there's a lot of opportunity to participate in the Laurentian thing. And probably we'll have it's whoever organizes, and comes to the table certainly gets the resources. I mean, we see that as we talk about, what each community is different because the group that comes together is so different. We have like the librarian in Cook has been a champion, and she's used that to build a cool program. And the community is so excited about the library being revitalized as a result. So that's a great thing. And so
Another great example is in Aiken County, where at the table were really champions from the little town of Palisade. And they were there, and they got Palisade, which is, Wi-Fi enabled. They got, in fact, they got fiber. That wasn't directly a part of our project, but it kind of, things happen when you
now
start
they're gonna have
putting it.
fiber everywhere.
Fiber to the
Palisade
home
is
in
gonna be fiber to the home.
Palisade.
Yeah.
See, just
Yeah.
like Embarrass, and don't have it created.
Yeah.
It's a little cable
Right.
I have a
company.
Paul Bunyan wire going right by my house.
I know, me too. I know.
It's in my front
Yeah,
yard.
you too.
Can't
It's
use it.
only a half a mile.
Document
Strange.
and the information to entice the
world.
Paul Bunyans and the CTCs to possibly invest, but without the local leadership at the townships, the city councils, the county, and our state legislature, without them, we're
It's
just
not gonna happen.
swimming around in a big ocean, trying to
Because
say this is a good
Whitney's the big
idea.
weaver, because she's the one who sees the vision that you need this and this and this and this. Everybody has a part.
Because the business case doesn't make sense to run past our rural communities, so that's why the townships and the local entities have to step
That's why
up.
there's gonna be state or federal grant money and some local commitment in some way.
And then they'll come.
And it can't just be IRRB or just be St. Louis County, because it's gonna take everyone.
So
Well, then St. Louis County won't come to the table because the guy is not really all excited about it, so we have to convince them.
So Mary, what's the timeline on this? When are we gonna try to decide what's our?
I think the applications are due on September 28th or some time at the end of September. And then we'll probably make a decision pretty soon because we want to get those communities at the conference on October 23rd and 24th.
And then will you have your cohort gathering in November like you did last time?
November, December, I think last time it was on November 30th.
Yeah.
So we'll do that at the Blended Foundation again, we hope, as long as we have a room available, which isn't always.
And
Well, look at
with
this
that,
beautiful community center, you could have it too. Or Minnesota Discovery Center. bring it.
Less than a megabit of Wi-Fi.
I know. Well, Whitney has gotten the Discovery Center more connected, right?
Even that was rough the other day.
Yep.
Yeah, we were there
but they
for
have
their,
that same thing where they're throttling the public,
To allow the, yeah.
but we won't have the Amy Klobuchar debacle that happened at the town meeting, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't that, I mean,
Yeah.
but we
Talk
have
about a
to-
video trying to
It's
look.
Come to our
always
new high
been
school, you help
allowing
support
the
it.
internet for your
You have the
phone.
technology, you
Just like
might as
that.
well take advantage, you supported it. I
You
can't
guys could
imagine
do
a
it
better
through the
place.
IASC telepresence consortium, why not,
I'm
right?
serious.
Because we're connected to that.
Yeah, I
Get
think
our
the new school is
We
a
love
great
face-to-face.
place.
I know, we like face-to-face for the first one, but after that, you can try some of that.
that's true.
This high tech is possible up here. Yeah.
And then we'll just invite what's his name up here and we'll run it over satellite so he can see it not loaded.
So why do you guys think about this, have a little discussion internally, and see who's gonna be,
I think if there's a possibility of a hybrid, I would be, that
Yeah.
makes it clear in my mind. Otherwise, I'm just thinking back when we were trying to form our group, the Laurentian Chamber didn't want to even give us a letter of commitment initially.
I remember.
She's like, I
I'm
don't know,
new."
but I'll seem like I'm partial to Mountain Air. So what is it to ask them to outreach to Buhl and
Yeah.
Great Scott Township? And I know, leadership is different there now, again, but, I just don't wanna put us in a position where we
You're
come this
very
far,
wise.
we're trying to get things
Choosing your
going.
partner in anything
Well,
is critically important.
I just
And
don't
it
wanna,
you have to be on the right
yeah,
connection, you have to have the same goals, the same audience, and so the idea about, well, they're all gonna be about all business, well, what does that mean for Buhl? I mean, there aren't that many businesses in Buhl, and so,
Right.
so I understand that, and so you just want to, I could see that.
I don't think they're gonna be about all business, because here's the issue with it, as Steve said, the towns are served, technically.
Yeah.
So they're bringing in the townships and the school districts because that's where we're not served. And so and like a Joy Global is right down the road, and they weren't served for a long time either. So yes, part of it is business community, but part of it is because all of those people that sit at that table as business owners are also rural citizens who don't have access when they get home, and they can't work from home.
And
So,
community members in
yeah.
general. The
Right.
Hibbing Chamber led the Hibbing group.
Yeah,
They
and
were
it wasn't
a
about.
business, there was a business
Oh,
focus.
Yep.
But there were other things done.
Yes.
and I can see where it would be a benefit when our current projects really has stirred up some people in the community to be thinking about this and to want this. So there could, to have another opportunity for the community to engage, since the last one we had, which we had 50 people.
Yeah, that was
First
great.
meeting. But there might be, there might be more participation from what
Yeah. And so,
now.
And we need to bring
after
that.
We've been stirring the pot.
We need to bring that feasibility study back to that group, to talk to them about, like you said, what we've done. If we don't engage them again and say, okay, remember that feasibility study we sort of talked about that everybody put their dots on? Here's what it looks like.
One thing I've been so gratified is to hear Whitney say, I've heard her say it now at every meeting, this plan about bringing Diane back and
Yep.
taking that to Steve's point, to all of the councils and chambers that
Yep.
you can.
Which is a beast in itself to try to organize.
Yeah,
Hibbing wants individual meetings. I talked with Steve, well, what about the Mount Iron Buell community? Do we go to Great Scott? Do we go to Mountain Iron? Do we go to the school district? Can't we get them all to just go to one meeting and listen to the information and, what works for the community?
The one that worked is
Very
the Great
difficult.
Scott meeting, I believe on October 3rd.
Yeah, that was the one I.
And the concern I have is the hall set up so that we can record it, make sure it's, and so that, that's what I sent my concern about that part. So we need to just plan and be forward-thinking about it and make sure that we can record it, get it out on public access for everybody to see.
Can we get all the elected officials in one room? Do they get
They
along
won't all
enough?
fit, right? In that. How many
Get
can we
along
fit there?
enough.
30? And then community members?
You could probably go 50, but.
and so now, our little discussion's been hijacked a little bit about that, so I'd like to get back to
We're
the
gonna hijack it,
idea
yeah.
I know.
all right,
about
I gotta
the,
leave.
and so the critical thing.
We're gonna go too, I hope you
Okay.
understand.
Go ahead.
Thank you, guys, thank you.
Thank
Hats
you.
off to you.
Thank you again very much.
Yes,
and it's
that's
been a
great.
Great experience.
And we'll come
Sure.
tour your new school. We wanna see, I'd love to do
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
Critical piece,
Yeah.
and I'm looking
How's that
at
new homestead?
the doers right now, right? So there's work to happen, right? Who's gonna do the work? Look, so that's what we're talking about, right?
That is why we're concerned
So-
about Bill and Jewel going it
So
over
that,
again.
because I know, Lisa, you expressed
I
some frustration, and it is a big, it's just like for the Hibbing Chamber, they express frustration, because it's a lot of work for an organization. If this gets going and is done right, it is a lot of work with accompanying benefits. So the question is, and I don't even mind listening to people issue concerns about work, that's part of my job, that's all right. But the question is, is this team ready to step up again for another 18 months and lead the projects and lead the visioning sessions and do all that kind of
Well, we
work?
would do something different this time, and we would write in funds to allow somebody to facilitate it, because it's obvious that this is not, just easy to facilitate without that. You need to have a home, and that's one of the things that we talked about with the Lawrence Chamber. If they allow Melissa to work on this, we need to make sure that, this focus for her for a while is covered. So that's okay, but, if we decide to be an alumnus community on our own, we need to do that this time. There's no other way to do it. You have to pay somebody to do the work that you want them to do, or,
Well, if it's not
Can't
already, I
expect
mean,
that.
what's so nice about a lot of is that if this is their job, and so it's value add, and by doing the project, they're doing their work.
Yeah.
That's when you get a really successful
Right.
infrastructure
Yep.
leader.
Yeah, and I think and for me, I think the frustration's been, some of it's been added work, but some of it is, I can't ultimately make the decisions. I can't say,
well, because you
on
didn't
behalf
house
of
the
the school
grant.
district, yep, we're gonna
Yeah.
have donuts at a meeting. I mean, just dumb things like that. would
Because
take
you
me
didn't house the
hours
grant,
to-
yeah.
Can you please get some refreshments at our meeting?
So,
I gotta pass it on to somebody. Okay, I gotta call this person.
so to
I mean,
that
so
point,
just some goofy
no,
stuff.
I'm not even kidding you.
It's just goofy stuff that I'm like,
It took me 3 weeks to find out how I was supposed to bill out something. And all it was is we need a W-9 and send the invoices our way. I'm like, goodness
Yeah.
sakes, I sent that email every week for 3 weeks. So it's obvious to me that the school district is not the right place to house it, so the grant.
well, and I would say,
Somebody else probably
Maybe,
could step up.
but I